decided he wanted a new wife. Next slide there, Jeannie. It's entitled The Stoning of Sariah Young. This man decided that he wanted a new wife. He fell in lust with a 14-year-old and decided he wanted her as his wife. Now, in Islam, you can have 4 wives, but he couldn't afford 2 wives. So he came up with a plan to get rid of old number 1 so he could get young, pretty number 2. He and his friends conspired to have number 1 be accused of adultery. Therefore, Islamic law would have her stoned to death, and he could get new number 2 without having to pay for number 1. And we look at that and we say, how appalling. What a terrible thing for somebody to do. And yet, if we look at that next slide, Jeannie, we see Scott Peterson, who killed his wife out in California because he didn't want to divorce her. And we see Drew Peterson, who is accused of killing 2 or 3 wives for the same reason. We look at that culture over there in the Middle East and say how appalling. We ought to look at ourselves and say, whoa, wait a minute. What has marriage become in our situation? Jesus said in Matthew 19:3-10, conversation he had with the Pharisees. Some Pharisees came to him and tested him. They asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Unreconcilable difficulties would be our modern term. Jesus said, have you not read, Jesus replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the 2 will become one flesh. So that there are no longer 2 but 1. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man separate. Why then, they asked, this is the Pharisees, did Moses command a man to give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Prior to this, the custom was if a man didn't want his wife, he'd just kick her out. Too bad, I don't want you anymore, go. Moses raised the standard and said, wait a minute. You've got to give a written bill of divorcement. You've got to take some responsibility for what's going on here. But Jesus then went on and said, Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wife because your hearts were hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, and marries another woman, commits adultery. The disciples, now notice this isn't the Pharisees. The disciples said to him, if this is the situation between a husband and a wife, it is better not to marry. Now think how hard their hearts were. If you think about this for a minute. Think how difficult their attitude was, that they realized how hard it was to stay married. And how easy it was just to get out of it because it became difficult for a while. Let's do a little review from last week. Last week we talked about 5 points that make a marriage strong. The first one was the true love triangle between the man, the wife, and God. The second one was the idea of remaining sexually pure. The third one was loving your spouse as Christ loved the church. The woman in respect and obedience to the husband as Christ loved the church and being willing to die for their spouse and having that kind of love. The fourth one was the idea of marrying a believer. Somebody with similar interest is the way I expressed it. And then last of all is the idea of forming a new family and keeping the parents out of that family. Then we talked about the marriage ceremony for just a little while. The father and mother give the daughter to the new husband. Form a new family. They become a new family, leaving the old and forming a brand new relationship with a faithfulness to one another that lasts a lifetime. Third point that I have deals with the question that we have in the title. How to make your marriage work. Let's look at a video for a minute. Just push the button. Push the PowerPoint button. Just like you have all the rest of them. The down arrow. There it is. I was playing that before church, and Cliff said, that's 1940s music. I said, well, look at the people. So it works out real well. But it's a test. How many of those points that they made up there do you remember? There's 9 of them altogether. Somebody help me. Which ones do you remember? Build each other up? Okay, she's taking notes. Somebody else. What? Listen? Okay. What? Pray. What else? Kiss. He didn't do a very good job at that. But that's another thing. What else? What? Act like you're dating? Laugh? What? Do something together? Communicate? Okay. Love? All right. Let's look at it again and see how we did. That's all right. We won't worry about it. Keep on going. No problem. No problem. Okay, go back to the other. Let's think about these things that are there, and the responsibilities that we have, and that's a good list of relationships. To share responsibilities, to build each other up, to laugh, to communicate, to listen, to act like you're on a date, to kiss, to pray together, to love each other forever. The world has a tendency, and we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, about the relationship. Our marriage is a 50-50 relationship. We sit down at the very beginning of our marriage and say, Shirley, you wash the dishes and I'll vacuum half the house. I'll take care of the dog and you vacuum the other half of the house. I'll take out the garbage, and you take care of the flower beds on this side of the house, and I'll cut the grass over here, and we'll put our money in separate bank accounts, and never the twain will meet. I'll pay the electric bill, you pay the water bill, I'll pay half the mortgage, and you do this, and you do that, and we've got it divided 50-50, and we're at odds with each other all the time. Marriage, 70-30, 90-10. When I mentioned this in my sermon, somebody going out said, no, it's 100-0. Because my goal is to give 100%